Hello, I'd like to talk about the Japanese author called Soseki Natsume. I read the book, English translated book called Kusamakura. I just finished reading yesterday, and this book is very more or less like artistic attitude toward life and meditative. And as you know, the Japanese haiku, and I think the author Soseki tried to make this book as a haiku fiction. So anyway, Soseki is one of the great the novelist in modern Japan. Modern Japan started 1868 of the Meiji era. From before that, it's 200 years of closed Japan. Nobody allowed to come to Japan except the small island in Nagasaki, in Kyushu island, called Dejima. They can do a little trade from Holland and from European countries and so forth. But I think 1867 they opened. 1868 they opened the country because the pressure from the Commander Perry from U.S. came to pressure the Japanese government at that time, samurais, right, shogun, and they realized the Japanese, people realized, I think not the people, maybe shogunate, realized that, well, yeah, they are tremendously stronger than us, and if we cannot open it, they cannot destroy us, and therefore they have to open it. So they opened, and Meiji era started. So after Meiji era started, everybody wants to learn Western culture because they are so different. And before the Meiji era, the people were reading the sword and wearing kimono. And there's nothing like modern the Western culture at all, and a very different lifestyle then. And then all of a sudden, this Western culture came in. They realized that how much they admire the Western culture, how much they didn't know the science or the literature, art, and so forth. And so government pushed people to learn English and people to learn more Western culture. Soseki was born about 1967, just a year before the Meiji era started. And so entire Meiji era, he grew up in Japan, in Tokyo, and experienced this cultural, social phenomena, political phenomena. And so he was very smart, and he was sent to London for a couple of years to learn the British cultures and British literatures and so forth. And so he did that, and when he came back, he was to teach the university or whatever, the English literature or something. However, when he wrote the fiction and so forth, that was so popular at that time. That was first fiction was I Am a Cat. This one here, it's a kind of a thick book, but this one became very popular in Japan, and one of the newspaper company told Soseki, well, you don't have to be a professor or you can be a writer. And we give you some money that if you contribute some writing to the newspaper. So he decided, oh yeah, that's a good idea. And so he became a writer. And around 1906, he wrote this fiction called Bochan. Bochan is one of the most popular book by Soseki, and he described that I think mainly his experience of young teacher going to Shikoku Island countryside and to teach the probably high school, junior high school type of kids. And I think that based on that particular experience that he wrote this book. But this book is very funny. It's almost like a comedy. And when I read it when I was young, I just took it very light-hearted comedy. You know, it's not a literature, maybe not, but this year I decided to read it again. And it struck me that how good this one is. How good the particular sentiment of changing the mood of Japanese society. And so I like this, but at the same year or a year later, he wrote this Kusamakura. Kusamakura means grass pillow. That means I think you sleep in the wilderness on the grass or something like that. And so this is very different from this. This is comedy and very funny, very entertaining. This one is more meditative and serene. It's about artist, painting artist, a painter, Western style painter who is maybe tired of living in the city and get very stressed, so he kind of escaped to this mountain, very shabby resort area where not so many people goes, and so this is the experience of things he did during the stay in that small hot spring village. And describes all those things that he sees in nature, of pretty much about nature. The flowers, camellia flowers, beauty of the queen's flowers, and the person he meets there, very mysterious person, and so forth. And it's like a read. Like I would say meditative type of reading, but it's tremendously kind of difficult to get into because there is no simple story development or anything like that, and you really have to read whatever he's talking about. Nature, the revelation to the beauty of this particular scenery, or the mountains, or going, to the temple, whatever. So, but after reading this, you kind of cleansed. Maybe, it's like a beautiful, subtle changes of the story. In the background of Russian and Japanese war. At that time it's happening there in Japan. And it's like a very tense the moment there. So overall, I don't know this book that people enjoy when you read this. But it's worthwhile. If you like Japanese culture, for example, if you like the Japanese haiku, for example, you will enjoy this. And if you are an artist, is a musician or the painter or the poet, for example. I think you should read this. It's very, very profound thoughts and everything is in there. As a matter of fact, and when I was reading this, I discovered that Glenn Gould, Canadian pianist who plays lots of Bach music during 1960s, late 50s to 60s, the Goldberg variations, Well-tempered clavier, all these things, and I have all the CDs now, Glenn Gould's CDs. But Glenn Gould, toward the end of his life, really loved this book, and so I realized that it's something in this book, talked to Glenn Gould about the artistic endeavor, I would say. So it's kind of in that sense also, it's very interesting to read. So in that sense, I recommend. Okay, but Soseki, this year, the Soseki has been one of the most popular authors in modern Japan, and one of the book called Kokoro, which is the heart, is I think the most popular book by him. And Kokoro described this end of Meiji era and death of Meiji emperor, and several people thought that that particular incident, end of Meiji, was the end of everything. And the Meiji was a Western culture came in there to Japan and started to learn more, outside the country cultures and everything. However, there is still lots of this traditional Japanese samurai culture that remained there. So at the end of the Meiji, they thought the samurai culture ended or something. But anyway, the Kokoro is more psychological and very entertaining. When you read it, you are drawn to the story and you cannot stop because it's so good. I really like that Kokoro, and I was hoping that the other books also it's like that, but it's not. This is very, very different from Kokoro, and this is 1906, and Kokoro was written 1916 or something like that, toward the end of his life, and very different the writings there. But he has lots of other book I haven't read. This one, Sorikara, and then that's English title. I'd like to read it next. But this one's called Sanshiro. Sanshiro I read this year also in Japanese, but this is English translation, and it's about the young university students coming to Tokyo, the university there, and start to enjoy or experience the other intellectuals around him. And so that's also very, very interesting, really enjoyable too. So I would say, if you are interested in Soseki, this one, the Bochan, for me, it's one of the most, readable, enjoyable book. But for, I was reading this first introduction section, and it's saying, outside Japan, maybe this book, this humor in this book and so forth is not much enjoyed outside Japan, maybe, or something like that. But I think regardless, I think this is you have to read. I think it's kind of interesting to read. And this one I haven't read. Snippet I read a little bit. I'm a cat. It's about the point of view of this particular cat, looking at these owners and families and so forth. And but anyway, so this one very artistic and like a haiku lovers fiction. So please read this. Thank you.